My family moved here from Avon Park in 1936, and my mother and I put our membership in the church at Tillman Avenue. And then later in years, my sister and my father were baptized and came into the church.
I go all the way back to the Tillman Avenue Church. We came to Lake Wales when I was 3 years old, and we started church pretty soon after I came.
When the doors were open, we were usually there. It was just our life, and it just meant everything to the whole family.
My sister and I were like 3 or 4 years old, and like everybody else that mentions the Tillman Avenue Church, I remember those wicker chairs that were there. And they were large wicker chairs, and so the two of us could sit in one, and our mother would always put us together in one. And I remember getting into trouble one day when we decided we wouldn't sit. We would lay down in them and put our feet up on the back of the chair. And we only did that one time, so we learned our lesson there.
I would go down on Fridays after work and pick up the information for the Sunday bulletin. And then I would take it to the office and cut the stencil and put it on the cylinder and ink the cylinder and then crank out the bulletins, and then I'd take them back to Brother Dance.
Lots of memories all the way back to Tillman Avenue. I remember, I think I've told you, my daddy and I were both baptized on the same Sunday night at the old Tillman Avenue Church.
When Mr. Gilbert was a minister at the Tillman Church, my husband and I were married there, and there had not been a wedding in the church in a long time. And so on May 20th, 1947, Brother Gilbert married us, and at this time when he was working with the property out at Lake Aurora, and my husband was afraid he wasn't going to get there in time to do the ceremony, but he did.
I'm William Johnson, 93 years old, and I went to the First Christian Church, Lake Wales. That's where I was married. In 1956 to Henrietta Johnson, or Henrietta Pritchett at that time.
Remember the move to Sessoms Avenue well? That was a really big decision for the church.
Then when the church sold, we got two of the old chairs in the church, and they were in our first home.
What about the Christmas
Oh, yeah.
decoration?
The live nativity scene. Yeah, we have lots of memories of that too.
Well, every Christmas, the church would put up a live nativity scene. It would be at the edge of the property where people could drive by slowly and enjoy it, or they could park in the parking lot and get out and see it.
And my husband and other men used to build the stable. Women of the church made costumes, and we had Mary and Joseph and 3 shepherds, and there was a baby doll for Jesus.
Some Christmases were warm and you were hot in those costumes, and some Christmases were cold and you nearly froze to death standing out there for a couple of hours.
And we would have goats and sheep, and one time we even had a donkey.
We had a donkey one time that got loose. We were running him all over town. So
Yeah.
Some of the sheep got out.
Well, the police called the ministry.
And so the men of the church had to chase down the sheep all over Lake Wales.
And so in the middle of the night, there were some men running around the neighborhood, rounding up the sheep.
And so this is one time when you can say that literally the elders and deacons were seeking the lost sheep, and they were shepherding and herding the church flock.
This wasn't very funny then, but later we had lots of giggles out of it.
lots of stories with the live nativity scene, but it attracted a lot of attention.
And this took a lot of work, and a lot of people in the church were involved in this.
A lot of people drove through there at night to see that, yeah.
What I remember probably most about First Christian Church is memories actually before I ever moved to Lake Wales, because I was preaching for a church in Tampa, and we'd come to preachers' meetings, and I always saw it as a rather unique and thriving church. I knew of its association to Lake Aurora, and I was just always impressed with the church when I came over.
My husband and I worked with the youth group, and these were not real little ones.
Hello, I have 3 stories to tell. They're all true. It's about growing up as a teenager in the church. I've changed the names to protect the innocent. So we'll say it was like James, John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and Peter. There was about 12 of us in the youth group. We had a boat. The First Christian Church owned the boat. It was aluminum. We went out to Lake Aurora to the Christian camp, and we started rowing across the lake. So of course, we're calling Peter, you know how Peter was. He had a handful of cherry bombs. So he lights them and he starts dropping them in the water. We're watching these things go boom. And then all of a sudden, he drops one off the front of the boat, and we row over it, and it blows a hole in the bottom of the boat. A big hole in the aluminum boat. So the water's gushing up, and all of us guys were rowing harder and harder, and we made it to the end, and we didn't sink, we didn't drown. And of course, the elders and the deacons, when they found out about it, they weren't really happy with the youth group, us guys.
We had what we call secret destination, and we'd get in cars and drive around town, and they never knew which family's house they were going to go to for snacks and some activities. And the time we had it at our house, our boys didn't even know that they were going to our house. I had hid the refreshments in the washing machine, so they didn't know it. And so they were quite surprised when the car stopped at our house.
In the baptismal area, the pastor would put on waders up to his waist with suspenders that you go fishing in. That way he wouldn't get his clothes wet when he got into baptismal, and he would baptize the people. So one of our guys, we'll call him Peter again, he got to the waders before the baptismal service, and he poked holes in the waders. So while the pastor was in the water baptizing, his waders were filling up all the way up to his waist, and when he got out, he was soaked.
Great teachers for Sunday school and Christian Endeavor, and great vacation Bible schools. Really big ones, and just how good that was, and how much I learned of Scripture back at that church those days. So.
And then we went down south to the Florida Youth Convention, Southeastern Youth Convention. It was in Fort Lauderdale. And our youth group, we were having elevator races in the hotel, and we broke the elevator system. So at the end of the convention, we were voted the worst youth group in the whole South. I'm sorry. We all grew up, we all got baptized and saved, and none of us ever went to prison.
When we came there in the late 80s, right away we knew everyone was friendly. They spoke to us, and I think part of it was faith. There was such a strong faith of the people here. Beautiful choir, beautiful music.
Fellowship on Wednesday nights, as I recall, we'd always have something to eat. We'd potluck dinner with us.
Betsy was assigned to do the Wednesday night meals and the
Not
special
assigned,
occasion meals.
volunteered. Not assigned,
And
volunteered.
that was we were doing that about 15 years. Yeah, we did some work at the church.
No, we did a lot of work. Art's being, he's being modest.
We had monthly fellowship dinners and no menus planned. It was all potluck. And I don't remember any time when we didn't have enough of everything.
And then the Christmas dinner, we always did a stuffed pork loin with apples and prunes. It was just wonderful. Oh, we'd spend hours and we'd tie up the roasts and cook them and decorate and decorate. And as I told you, the one incident I remember is we had the dining room just beautiful. We had evergreens and we had candles on the tables. It was really a beautiful meal. And just before it started, one of the elders walked in. He says, "Can't see a thing in here." And he went down and flipped on all the lights. And we were just like, oh no. So we compromised. We turned every other one off. And that way we had a candlelight and the lights for the dinner.
I think the main thing for me is just the continuity of all of these years. The church has been there and been part of our lives and our children's lives. Over all of this long period, we always knew that the church was there.
But I think you need the church to get a foundation.
Well, for me, the greatest impact that the church made is starting Lake Aurora. And because of that effort, I mean, literally it went worldwide with the impact of the church. I just don't know how you can make a better impact than what they did.
Delmer DeBolt. He was a missionary. So he went to the Philippines and established a Bible college in one of the islands in the Philippines. He went to every continent, most of the cities and the big cities in the world. He was the first one they let into Russia when they collapsed. So he made a big influence on the world.
So the influence of the church and older members in it can set examples, and you never know how you will affect someone. And so I feel like I've been fortunate to be able to still be here and see it.